Hey guys, I just thought I'd do another deck tech. This one's on my Tiny Leaders deck for Feldon of the Third Path. If you haven't played Tiny Leaders, it's a pretty cool format. It's a lot like EDH or Commander, whatever you want to call it. But it's a one-on-one format, and you can only have cards that are CMC less than 3, converted mana cost less than 3. So the guy I chose was Sad Santa, Feldon of the Third Path. Basically, all he does is he makes tokens of creatures in your graveyard. So you pay 3 and you tap them and you make a token that's a copy of the creature in your graveyard, and then it gets sacrificed at the beginning of the end step. Kind of weird, very flavorful. That's what I like about him. He's really flavorful. You know, he's trying to rebuild his wife. He's such a sad Santa. Anyways, so this deck uses modular and a lot of enter the battlefield effects to just it's kind of a red control deck, which is weird. I don't play a lot of control, but it's kind of a red control deck because you just control them out until you can beat them down. Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, so let's start with the creatures besides Feldon. Arcbound Ravager, must have. He makes this deck shine. He makes this deck into an aggro deck. If you have him out, so the key thing about the tokens that Feldon makes is that they're artifacts. And so if this guy's out on the battlefield, every time you make an artifact token, they die at the end of the turn anyways. Might as well sacrifice them to Arcbound Ravager. And if he dies, then the modular goes to another artifact creature, and you run a bunch of artifact creatures in this deck anyways. So the modular is secondary, but the fact that you have a sacrifice outlet to the creatures that are going to die anyways, it's like, ooh, man. Yeah, real good. Another Arcbound Slith. He's got this Slith ability where if he deals damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on him, and of course he's got modular as well. So you kind of think of these guys as you swing once and you hit, and then you get the effect. So this guy, you recur him back, and you just use his modular. He's another modular target. So if you don't hit your Arcbound Worker, which is just a 1/1 for 1 with modular 1, you have this guy as well to modular onto other artifact creatures that you have out. It all makes sense in the end. Ball Lightning is a 6/1 trample haste, and he gets sacrificed at the end step for 3, which is really nice because you can just keep playing him for 3 every single turn, just over and over again. It doesn't matter if he gets sacrificed at the end step, he's going to get sacrificed at the end step anyways, because the token you make gets sacrificed at the end step anyways. I don't know how else to say it. Cathodion, that's probably how you say that. Cathodion. He makes 3 colorless mana when he dies, which is cool because he dies at the end of the turn. So if you have any instance that you want to play, you can do that. But there are also some sacrifice outlets like Arcbound Ravager and some other ones that come up later that you can sack him and then play other things based off of that. So he's a cool little 3/3 for 3, a good target sometimes for Feldon, but he's in there for the mana. Cosmic Lava. Now this kind of starts to get into excuse me, the cool 3-drop and unders, big ass creatures that have huge drawbacks but don't matter if you bring them on off of Feldon. Because, okay, this guy says that at the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice Cosmic Larva unless you sacrifice 2 lands. Of course you're going to sacrifice Cosmic Larva, because if he's in your graveyard, then he just becomes a target for Feldon, and every time you bring him back with Feldon, he dies at the end step, so you don't have to sacrifice 2 lands anyways. It's great. You just get a 7/6 for 3 with Trample. And even if you don't attack with him the turn you play him, Feldon gives the token haste, and so it's like you have him out. Anyways, you can have him out for blockers, and then you get him off of Feldon. It's great. Eidolon of the Great Revel is fantastic in this deck, because if he's on the battlefield, you're not really playing creatures. You're really kind of just using Feldon's ability to get creatures from the graveyard, and that won't trigger Eidolon. Whereas in the format, everything triggers Eidolon. It's amazing. And you can also flash him back with Feldon for extra damage if you need to, or whatever. Etched Champion, great artifact, and most of the time you will have Metalcraft, because the guys you bring back are artifacts, and so if he's in play naturally, you'll bring back artifacts and you'll have Metalcraft most likely. Or if you bring him back, you'll probably have there's a lot of artifacts in this deck, and so he fits really nicely. The protection from all colors makes him a great blocker and a great attacker. Flamewake Phoenix, super awesome because he can recur by himself if there's a power 4 or greater, and because of cards like Cosmic Larva, you often do have power 4 or greater, and it's only one red. So he's a great flyer. He has evasion. He has haste. He's not a target for Feldon. He comes back by himself. So it adds threat on top of what Feldon can do, especially if they kill Feldon multiple times. Goblin Welder, a legacy staple, but they reprinted it in the new red commander deck, and this card is amazing, and it has great synergy with some other cards that'll come up with later, but also like any of the Cathodion. Man, I don't know how to say that, but that also works well with this one. Hellspark Elemental, another sack of the end step creature with trample and haste. He's not the best out of all of them because he's only a 3/1. He has Unearth, but most of the time you're not going to unearth him because you're just going to bring him back with Feldon. If he's early game, you're only going to have him or like Ball Lightning, those kinds of guys in the graveyard, and so those will be your main targets. Keldon Marauders, this guy's kind of really interesting. You really want him in the graveyard. He's a 3/3, so he's a good beater. But when he comes into play, he deals 1 damage to target player. When he leaves play, he deals 1 damage to target player. So basically, if you bring in tokens of him off of Feldon, he deals 2 damage every single time you do that. 2 damage every single turn. It's pretty great, and you get a 3/3 that you don't care about if it dies or not, and so you throw it at them. You just throw it at them, and it's great. Mir Superion, another one of those weird high power, high toughness, low mana cost with weird drawbacks creatures. This you want to get them into your graveyard, and there are ways to get cards from your hand into your graveyard pretty efficiently. But if you don't, you can cast them off of Cathodion. Man, I don't care. You can cast them off of Cathodion. But mainly you want them in the graveyard, and there are ways you can do that. But a 5/6 that you can get every single turn, great, awesome, super awesome. This guy's another guy who does 2 damage every time you bring him back. Phyrexian Soulgorger, an 8/8 that you can get back. He's only a 3-drop, so he's legal in the format, and you can play him on turn 3, and then cumulative upkeep, sacrifice creature, just sacrifice himself, put him in the graveyard. That's where you want him. Shrieking Mog. Okay, this is where we get into the red control part. So, since Feldon's ability is instant speed, Shrieking Mog says whenever it comes into play, tap all other creatures. If they're running a deck that is heavily creature-based, which is a lot of tiny leaders, every time they go to combat, you pay 3 mana and tap all their creatures. And then they can't do anything. We call this the Mog Lock. And you just do that until you get into an advantageous position. Or until the game ends because they kill Feldon. But, don't think about that. Don't think about that. Spark Elemental, one of the greatest 1/1s. He just boom, 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 3 damage. Turn 1, he's like a lightning bolt on a stick that they can block, so it's actually a lot worse. And then Sin Scourger is a little bit more of the control. It returns target creature to its owner's hand, and you do this every turn. You can just keep returning their commander to their hand or whatever threat that you need to deal with. Tuk Tuk, he's great. He makes a 5/5 when he dies, so you can play him and block with him, or attack, and they won't want to block because you'll get a 5/5. But if he's in the graveyard, you bring him back once and you get your 5/5. And once that 5/5 dies, after a couple turns and you brought some other stuff back, you can bring him back and make the 5/5 again. Vexing Devil. Great card. This is one of my favorite red cards ever. So when he comes into play, an opponent can choose whether or not you sacrifice him by paying for life or not. So if they pay for life, he does not survive. If they don't pay for life, he does survive, and then you attack for 4 next turn anyways. The cool thing is that you most of the time when if you play this turn 1, they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll take the 4 life. He dies. Then you play Feldon and bring him back, and you're like, okay, do you want to pay for life? And they're like, this really, 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 really sucks. Because then you're attacking, and that assumes that they don't have a big blocker or whatever. Anyways, now to the sorceries. Burning Inquiry. This card can really screw you, but this card can also really do exactly what you want. So it's a 1 mana. Each player draws 3 cards and then discard 3 cards at random. The random is the part that can screw you, but it also can mess up your opponent too. But this is how you would get like Mirror Superion in the graveyard, or anything else that you want in the graveyard into the graveyard. Faithless Looting is a better version of that. You draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. This is how you would choose to put Mirror Superion into the graveyard on your own account. And then it's got Flashback, which is even greater. Then you've got Mizzium Mortars, which is board control. You can overload it and deal damage. Often you play it early because often you want to deal with their stuff early on. So if they bring out their commander early or whatever, but you play it by ear, and it gives you that versatility that is so necessary in these kinds of formats. Pyroclasm, also exactly board control. And Whip Flare. Whip Flare's a better version of Pyroclasm for you, unless they're playing artifacts, because all the tokens that you bring back are artifacts, and also you're running a lot of artifact creatures anyways. Altar of Dementia, this is your alternate win condition, because every time you bring back a creature, they're going to die at the end of turn anyways, so you sacrifice them to Altar of Dementia, and what Altar of Dementia does is target player puts the number of cards, they mill equal to that creature's power. So imagine you're bringing what's the best one? A Phyrexian Soulgorger in every single turn. They're milling 8 each turn. These decks only have 50 cards. Mill is a viable, win condition. Altar of and it's simple and it's singleton. So if you get rid of one of their key cards, you've gotten rid of it. So this is your alternate win condition. Commander Sphere is ramp. It is nice to have, because since he costs 3 and then his ability is also 3, having a little bit of ramp allows you to do other things along with, and we're only running 16 lands. So being able to do other stuff is really nice. Also, you can draw a card. Acre Wellspring interacts with the Goblin Welder really well. and also the Arcbound Ravager extremely well. Acre Wellspring and Mycosynth Wellspring, the two Wellsprings. Basically, they say when they enter the battlefield or when they're put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you do something. Ichor is draw a card. Mycosynth is put a land from your library into the battlefield. This one's less important. This one's really awesome. And if Skull Clamp was not banned in Tiny Leaders, that would be an auto into this deck. Well, an auto into every single deck. So I guess that's not worth mentioning. Lightning Bolt moving on to my instance. Lightning Bolt because it's red and Lightning Bolt is so powerful. That's why it's so powerful. Shrapnel Blast because the counters that I bring in are artifacts and they're gonna die anyways. 5 damage for 2 mana is amazing. Star Storm because board wipes are very important. Your stuff mostly dies anyways, and this is more board wipes. So the lands, we've got both the artifact lands that we can run and a bunch of mountains. Planeswalkers. I get to run Tibalt in this deck. That is debatably my favorite part of this deck is that I get to run Tibalt and I don't feel bad about it. It's not for flavor. He actually does what I want him to do. He's a 2-mana Planeswalker. He makes me draw a card, then discard a card at random. At random kind of sucks, but I want to be discarding cards. I want to be putting stuff in the graveyard. His other stuff, I honestly don't care about. But the fact that I can play Tibalt and feel good about it, and actually have people be like, "Wait a second, Tibalt's doing something for you. I need to deal with Tibalt." That's like I just try to imagine that feel. Like, I mean, oh my god, I'm so happy about it. Sideboard is not really thought out. There's like 6 cards in it. Bottle Gnomes. This is kind of more like a maybe board. This is like the stuff I was kind of considering. Blood Moon, of course, because I'm only running red sources. So this would be amazing against any multicolored deck. But it's a sideboard because it wouldn't be pertinent against every single deck. Bottle Gnomes in case I need life gain. Vandals against artifacts, because when they come into play, you can you can do that over and over again if you need to. They're also a 4/1, which is cool. Good power. Molten Rain if their lands matter. Revoker, I can bring it in response to stuff. Pithing Needle, it interacts with Goblin Welder. The sideboard's whatever, but I mean, Tibalt, man, crazy stuff. Looking at this list, I think I'm actually missing a card. I think one of these cards is wrong, now that I think real hard about it, because I know I'm running a collateral damage. So for those of you who don't know what collateral damage is, it's 1 red, an instant. As an additional cost to play collateral damage, sacrifice a creature, and then it lightning bolts. So it's lightning bolt, but you have to sack a creature. And I'm looking at this list and I'm trying to figure out what I'm missing, what I'm missing, what I'm not running in this list. Now that I'm looking at it, and I think it might be a land. I think I might be running 15 lands and also a collateral damage, because the collateral damage allows me to use Cathodian effectively. It allows me to use modular pretty effectively, and also it just allows me to run 2 lightning bolts, instant speed lightning bolts, because the token dies at the end step. And that's really important, because 3 is a significant number, especially in Tiny Leaders where the converted mana cost is so low. 3 is probably pretty high for that converted mana cost as far as power goes. Yeah, I think it is 15 lands with a collateral damage in here. Anyways, this is my tiny leaders, my little baby. There are a lot of different types out here, and I like to refer to this as my red control. But if you have any suggestions for me, if you have any red cards that I should have in here, or if you have any tiny leaders decks or any decks that you would like me to do a deck tech for, or any matchups that you'd like to see, make sure you drop a comment. Put the Tapped Out link in those comments. Tapped Out's a great website, not a sponsor though. Anyways, make sure you subscribe for further content and drop a like if you like this deck. I mean, who wouldn't like this deck? This is a great deck. Look at Sad Santa. Who doesn't like Santa, right? So if you don't like this deck, that means you don't like Santa. You're gonna get coal for Christmas. That's what that means. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.